Hello there, friends and neighbors. This is me, Stella Hendricks, back with part 2 of the Dorothy Stratten story from May 1981. This is really long, and there might end up being a part 3, but we'll see how it goes. It was late Sunday afternoon, a time when Hefner and his friends customarily gather for an afternoon buffet, to be followed by a movie in the spacious living room. Several dozen guests were already on hand, mingling at the bar and at the tables at the poolside patio. Dorothy met 3 playmates who were also staying in the mansion guest house. She also met Hefner's social secretary, Joni Mattis, a former playmate who has worked for Playboy for 20 years. Hefner appeared, wearing pajamas and a tailored robe. He had a pipe in one hand and a Pepsi in the other. He worked his way slowly through the crowd, greeting guests and talking casually with friends. Marilyn introduced him to Dorothy. Hef thought she was poised and pretty. Her nervousness didn't show. She remembered later. As I was shaking his hand, I thought my knees were going to go out from under me. He was the first famous person I had ever met. He didn't act like a celebrity, she decided. He was a human being. He had hands and arms and legs and a face just like everyone else. It took me a while to get over that. Dorothy was introduced to Patrick Curtis, a former child star from Leave It to Beaver, now a producer who was once married to Raquel Welch. Marilyn had a dinner engagement elsewhere. She asked Patrick to look after Dorothy that evening. Recently divorced again and lonely, Curtis was delighted. He guided Dorothy through the buffet line and sat with her during dinner. Afterwards, he took her on a tour of the property. On a secluded path in the redwood forest that covers one side of the estate, he moved to kiss her. I told him I wasn't there for that purpose, Dorothy would record. He smiled, and we walked back up to the house. Good for him for not being a jerk. There was a movie playing in the living room. We started to watch it. The day seemed like a lifetime by then. I was so exhausted, I asked Patrick to walk me to my room. He did and said goodnight at the door, and soon I was into sweet dreams, awaiting the morning. Dorothy spent all day Monday shooting with Mario. She decided he was the sweetest man in the world. Marilyn told her at the end of the day that her appearance as a playmate was assured. They would need at least 2 weeks to complete principal photography for her centerfold and the picture story that went with it. Okay, I know a lot of work goes into the pictorials even today. And I know back then they had, they didn't have all the digital copies and everything. But 2 weeks, they put like 10 pictures maximum, including like the extra ones and stuff in those really old, I guess this is the 80s by now, or it's the late 70s by now. But I assure you it does not take 2 weeks to get all those pictures. Dorothy flew home to Vancouver on Tuesday. Maybe I was leaving a dream, or maybe I had just started walking into one. To try to arrange a leave of absence from BC Tel. The company would allow her only a week, and that wasn't enough time. Her excitement irritated Spider. I think he got a little jealous and maybe worried, she decided. Dorothy had another difficult decision to make, and again she made it herself. She quit her job and returned to LA on Thursday. So I lived at Hugh Hefner's mansion for 3 weeks and worked with Mario almost every day. The hardest part was posing for the centerfold, shot with the stationary 8x10 camera in the studio. The photographer disappears behind the camera. Lights are adjusted, makeup improved, accessories changed, poses modified. The process is long and often tiring, but Dorothy rarely complained. She seemed to enjoy the challenge. The small camera sessions were pure pleasure, with Dorothy changing poses almost as rapidly as Mario could shoot them. We had a lot of good times while we worked, she said. We made each other laugh. Yeah, you see her laughing all the time, like in her Playmate video. Laughing. It's like she's on a roller coaster. She seems thrilled and very happy. Cassily thought that she enjoyed being photographed. She reminded him of a little girl playing make-believe. Secret dreams and fantasies, long locked inside her, found expression in front of the camera. With training, this girl could be a damn good actress, Mario thought. On her first morning at the mansion, Dorothy had felt uneasy with the casual nudity of the other playmates dressing in the guest house. At breakfast, it had taken her a long time to work up enough courage to give her order to the butler. But within a week, a different Dorothy began to emerge, more confident, more outgoing, and very much at home in this new environment. I was living a wonderful life in the warm sunshine, she wrote in her journal, being catered to 24 hours a day, butlers to feed me, maids to clean my room. I could have anything I wanted and more. Usually when I got home, I ate and went straight to bed. Sometimes I would stay up for a while and talk to Hef or his friends in the living room or play pinball in the great house with the girls. On Friday and Sunday nights, there was a buffet and a movie. Friends would come over and visit and have a good time. Spider called constantly. He called Dorothy, he called Marilyn Gabrowski, he called Mario. He called 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a day. He couldn't understand why the photography was taking so much time. He was suspicious. He thought someone must be doing a number on Dorothy's head. He asked Mario how she liked it there. Mario told him that he thought she was more excited by the limousine and the drive to and from his studio each day than by anything else. When Mario and his crew took Dorothy to Vancouver in early September to shoot on location, Spider met them at the airport with a rented limousine. "You guys take a cab," he told Mario. "The limousine is for Dorothy and me." Dorothy told Nellie that she was modeling. She didn't tell her yet that she was modeling for Playboy. She didn't think her mother would approve. After Mario left Vancouver, with her playmate appearance confirmed, Spider told Dorothy he wanted to get married. She hesitated. She wasn't certain she was ready to get married yet, but Spider persisted and she agreed to an engagement. Patrick Curtis had become a good friend. He'd shown Dorothy around LA while she was there, and she had lived for a brief time at his house. Now she called him from Vancouver. Could she and her boyfriend stay at his house until they found an appointment? Patrick, who imagined Paul to be imagine Spider. Fuck. My life. Who imagined Satan to be someone special to Dorothy. Someone special if Dorothy loved him, agreed. When they arrived, he was appalled at the pushy, crude hustler who moved in with her. Curtis was happy that he was kept away by business much of the time they were there. The couple stayed 2 months, and in that time they lived with him, Patrick never saw a genuine sign of affection between them. The decision on the 25th anniversary playmate was made mid-September. From several thousand candidates, the choices finally came down to 2 stunning women, Candy Loving and Dorothy. Candy was chosen because she was a senior in public relations at the University of Oklahoma and better able to handle the promotional responsibilities that go with that title. Okay, I understand that Dorothy Stratten turned out to be Dorothy Stratten, but also, can we stop with the gross narrative that we only picked Candy? Really, Dorothy was better, but we only picked Candy because she had more... Shut up! Maybe you picked Candy because she was the better competitor. She was the better choice for that particular office. Just say it and leave it there. My God. Am I still in a bad mood today, you guys? No! I might be a little cranky. Okay, don't worry. I'll keep sweet. Dorothy, who shortened her name to Stratten for professional reasons, was scheduled to appear as the August 1979 playmate. By then, it was felt, she would have enough poise and self-confidence to appear before the public and the press. Hefner first met Snyder at the... I keep doing this. I must have really not gone over this page. Oh, man, I'm going to have to bring some sage in here now. Ooh. Satan, get out. Hefner first met the sneaky little Spider at a Halloween costume party at the mansion. Hef hadn't seen Dorothy since her return to LA, and he greeted her warmly. She introduced him to Spider. They were an incongruous couple. She a shimmering angel in white satin. He, several inches shorter, even in lifts, was dressed as a pimp. Hefner was appalled. He was concerned enough about the relationship to have Spider checked out with the Vancouver police, but they had nothing on him in their computers. Dorothy went to work as a bunny in the Los Angeles Playboy Club for November. She wanted to study acting, hoping for a career. Patrick Curtis sent her to an agent friend who gave her all the names of 3 teachers. Meet with all 3, he advised, and go with the one that you like best. Dorothy and Spider chose Richard Brander, whose class of 10 met twice weekly in Sherman Oaks. Brander found vulnerability under Dorothy's obvious sexual appeal, a vulnerability that reminded him of Marilyn Monroe. Okay, yeah, they compare a bazillion people to Marilyn Monroe, Jane Mansfield, Anna Nicole Smith. No, I don't think that. I think that they certainly are a type and a great, iconic type, an archetype, but they are not Marilyn Monroe types. Dorothy really strikes me as a Marilyn Monroe type. He thought Dorothy had star quality. She learned quickly. She could learn to act. Brander was surprised to discover that Spider had talent too, but Spider wasn't interested in acting. He only confessed that he came to class to watch Dorothy. Dorothy took a small apartment in Westwood. To help with the rent, they asked a young actress they met in class named Molly to share the apartment with them. She agreed. A devout Lutheran, Molly blessed the apartment when they moved in. Spider didn't look for work. He was too busy planning new deals. But nothing he touched ever worked out. He came close in one time with a scheme that involved a West Los Angeles disco called Chippendales. This is before the Chippendales murders, isn't it? Yeah, this story runs right up next to another bunch of psychotic, crazy Hollywood murders too. He approached manager Steve Banerjee with a promotion. Disco was dying and Banerjee was ready to try anything. I bet he was. Spider got his idea from Misty's, a club in Vancouver, male strippers for a female audience. He supplied the strippers in exchange for the admission proceeds. Banerjee took the bar business. To Banerjee's surprise, women mobbed the place, but he and Spider soon had a falling out. In the past, Spider's business partners invariably wound up losers, but this time it was Spider who got stuck, netting only a few $100s after expenses. Dorothy was earning money from her part-time job as a Playboy Club bunny. Spider spent it. It worried her to have to support them both. She and Molly would go home in the middle of the day, and Spider would still be sleeping. Or they'd find him laying on the couch or watching TV with the drapes drawn. Yeah, today he'd be playing a video game. He kept the apartment dark, even in the daytime. Other times he'd be on the phone for what seemed like hours, talking new deals. He was pushing wet t-shirt contest, wet underwear contest, handsomest man in LA contest, but nothing was working. Spider constantly bullied Dorothy and routinely berated her. When she wasn't, isn't he so jealous of her? Big time vagina envy. Small men always get the worst vagina envy. And then they get all violent and fucking weird about it. I despise small men. I love big men. I love men. I love good men. But there's nothing that grosses me out more than small, petty, little bitch men. He opened her mail. He tried to bully Molly too, but with less success. Molly wondered why Dorothy put up with it. Love certainly is blind, she thought. Yeah, remember how earlier I was talking about how Spider is acting a lot like a cult leader? I 100% believe that because that's manipulation of your love and your hope. And Dorothy has so much love that he's manipulating it against her. And she has so much hope in him and she believes in his potential that he is also quite willing to abuse that as well. So just because your feelings towards a person are noble, your feelings will not protect you. Your love will not protect you. Your belief in that person will not protect you. I just want you to remember that as we're reading this very sad story about someone who we love, But, you know, one of the points of telling this story and over again is so that we can learn the lesson that Dorothy was not able to learn on time. You know? I think Dorothy would be happy that we did that, that we're doing that. Once, when Spider went back to Vancouver for a few days, Dorothy seemed a completely different person. Spirits soared and sunshine filled the apartment. She smoked cigarettes, wicked ciggies, forbidden by Spider, and joined Molly in safaris for cookies and chocolate ice cream at the Westward Ho Market. From their fourth floor window, laughing uproariously, Dorothy and Molly threw all of their grapefruit at Iranian students passing below. Why Iranian students? Was there an Iranian school nearby? That's so strange. Then Spider returned to LA and everything was back to normal. Spider pressured Dorothy to marry him as her playmate appearance drew closer. I don't even like blondes that much, he told an acquaintance, an older man. I really prefer brunettes. Spider's dark days were almost over, he thought. Dorothy would receive the rest of her $10,000 Playmate fee and begin earning money from Playmate promotions. But she was more than just a meal ticket to him. Dorothy was going to be his passport into that world that had thus far eluded him, especially here in Hollywood. The big time, the big deal, the big score. Dorothy knew that she was likely to be chosen as the next Playmate of the Year. That would mean $200,000 in cash and mostly prizes. Most important, Dorothy would be famous. Spider envisioned a Dorothy poster, a Dorothy book, Dorothy perfume. After that, the movies. Dorothy could become a star. If Dorothy was a star, why couldn't he be her producer? Anything was possible. One morning at exercise class, Dorothy talked to Marilyn Grabowski about marrying Spider. I owe it to him, Dorothy said. I was a nobody when he found me. Marilyn disagreed. You were never a nobody. You just thought that you were nobody. Whatever you become will be because of who you are, not because of someone else. The next year is going to be an adventure. Don't spoil it. Don't do something you may regret later. Live with him if you want to, if you feel you owe it to him. But don't get married. Spider increased the pressure. This is a partnership, he told Dorothy. It's a lifetime deal, 50-50. I just want to make it legal. When she remained indecisive, he threatened her. If you don't marry me, I'll leave you, and then what'll become of you? Dorothy went to see Hefner, and she told him that she was going to marry Spider. Since Hefner had become as much of a father to her as she'd ever had, she wondered if he'd be willing to give her away at the wedding. Hefner was touched and flattered. He was fond of Dorothy and concerned about her welfare. But a role at her wedding would be inappropriate, he said, since he was really opposed to her marrying Spider. I think that's a slight exaggeration of the situation by Mr. Hefner, but I think that he probably did gently tell her no, but he should have been stronger. You know, coulda, woulda, shoulda. It's definitely a hindsight situation. I don't know that she asked him to give her away at the wedding, though. Maybe. What the fuck do I know? I mean, it's entirely possible. When she wondered why, all Hefner could think to say was, Spider has the personality of a pimp. He was sorry as soon as he said it. It was insensitive and improper, he knew, and he started to apologize, but Dorothy laughed. Hef, she said, that was just his costume at the Halloween party. And she meant it. Oof. Kim Desmond, the girl Dorothy trained as her replacement at the Playboy Club, went with her to pick out a wedding dress. Kim expected the shopping to take all afternoon. Dorothy picked the second dress they looked at in the first store they tried. The dress was white, tight-fitting, floor length. It had a slit up the side and an abalone-colored sequins sewn on the bodice. Very pretty, Kim thought. Dorothy was being practical. She wanted something she could wear more than once. Dorothy's first Playmate promotion was scheduled in Las Vegas at the beginning of June. Spider flew to Nevada at the same time, and they were married in the Silver Bell Wedding Chapel. Spider chose the Reverend James Whitehead $65 wedding package, which included a short ceremony, a corsage for the bride from the floral refrigerator, photographs, and a cassette recording of the ceremony. Jake Mastran, a pal of Spider's, a classy guy, one assumes, was best man. Although the newlyweds spent 3 nights in Las Vegas, Dorothy later confided to a girlfriend that they didn't consummate their marriage until 2 weeks after the ceremony. The wedding reception was held on June 4th at the Van Nuys residence of actor-producer Mac Baer Jr. The bride seemed tense. A friend of Spider's was a doctor who gave her a Quaalude and then dispensed one to Spider and took one himself. Oh my god, that's one hell of a wedding reception, man. With the exception of 1978 Playmate of the Year, Deborah Jo Fondren, no one from the Playboy organization attended, although several had been invited. Spider's father flew down from Vancouver and posed proudly beside his new daughter-in-law in a white suit. Yeah, he's a huge creep too. You'll find out more about how lovely all of the Spider family is. Going to creeps. Molly was there, although she no longer shared the apartment with Dorothy and Spider. While cooking dinner one evening, she popped off at Spider, and he raged at her, turned over the kitchen table. He scared her badly. None of Dorothy's family attended the wedding either, or the reception. Dorothy would wait weeks before mustering enough nerve to call Nellie and tell her that she had married. That summer, Spider and Dorothy found a house in West Los Angeles. It was 2 stories of pale yellow stucco with a flat tile-trimmed roof. One small window beside the front entrance was guarded with a spiked wrought iron grill. The house had a double garage, and on its roof was a deck for a second-floor living room with a sliding glass door. There was a small bedroom on the first floor at the back of the house. The street was almost a cul-de-sac. Across the street, and elevated above the concrete pylons, partly blocking the sun, pounded the Santa Monica Freeway. The house was new. It rented for $6.50 a month. Spider invited Steve Kushner, a young doctor, to share it to lay off part of the rent. Kushner agreed and took over the upstairs quarters. In July 1979, Dorothy's whirlwind began. With her August issue on sale, she flew off to Canada to promote the magazine. She was one of the few Canadians ever chosen to be Playmate. It made her an instant celebrity. She would tour Canada for the rest of the month. Elizabeth Norris, Playboy's Playmate publicity manager, rendezvoused with Dorothy in Montreal. From there, they worked back across the country. Dorothy frolicked in the park for photographers, appeared with Candy Loving at a football game to kick out the first ball, and gave interviews on talk shows. Elizabeth was impressed with Dorothy's dedication and with how quickly she caught on. The public adored her. People responded not only to her exceptional beauty, but also her naivety, her warmth and charm. Can we stop glamorizing women's naivety, though? Because her naivety is very largely what got her killed. Let's remember. At personal appearances, crowds would swarm around her. "You're so beautiful," someone would say, and Dorothy would be delighted. She could sign autographs by the hour. "Come on, Dorothy," Elizabeth would say. "It's time to go." Dorothy would shake her head. "I'm not done yet." She wanted to sign everyone. She was having the time of her life. Vancouver was their last spot. Elizabeth was introduced to Nellie. To Dorothy's surprise, her mother seemed genuinely pleased with her success in Playboy and her new celebrity. Nellie was worried about Dorothy's marriage to Spider, however, and she said so. On her return to LA, Dorothy wrote her mother a letter. "Dearest Mom, thank you so much for being good to me and understanding of my schedule in Vancouver. I remember your tears as I was leaving. It was so sad. Please don't feel bad, Mom. The family's got each other, that's all that matters. Don't ever try to worry about anyone else. I'll try to get home again as soon as possible for a longer visit. Please try and take care of yourself, Mom, and be proud of yourself. I'm proud of you. You're beautiful. Love always, Dorothy. P.S. I miss you. When Dorothy was hired for a walk-on in the movie Americathon, she escorts Meatloaf on stage to give blood to help save America. She decided she needed an agent. She signed with David Wilder, who represented several other playmates also pursuing acting careers. Wilder immediately found Dorothy a small speaking part in Skatetown, USA. In September, Hefner hosted a Playmate reunion. Dorothy Stratten was one of the most recent of the 136 Playmates of the Month who attended. Each of them received a jeweled rabbit pendant to commemorate the occasion. It was an emotion-filled day for Hefner and for the women, who spoke of sharing a sense of lasting identification with each other and with Playboy. Hefner stood on stage welcoming 3 decades of Playboy centerfolds. "Without you," he cracked, "I'd have been a literary magazine." Seated next to Dorothy at the reunion luncheon was a reporter for the Washington Post. During lunch, they talked. "Tell him about your film career," Spider whispered from his seat on the other side of Dorothy. "I'm interested in acting in films and television," said Dorothy to the reporter. "Mention Americathon," Spider intoned again. "I'm in a movie called Americathon," said Dorothy. "It's about a telethon to save the country." "Tell him about Skatetown," prompted Spider, his asides growing more obvious. "And I just finished making a movie called Skatetown, USA," said Dorothy dutifully. "I roller skate in that one." "Really?" said the Post correspondent, fascinated by this amateur Svengali act with the beautiful blonde and the man in the black shirt, open down the front, neck chains and leather jacket, who looked like someone who hung out on street corners. Dorothy found more film and television work throughout the fall and winter. Because Canada allows tax credits for motion pictures made in that country with Canadian citizens, she offered advantages for Canadian filmmakers beyond her obvious beauty and novice acting skills. Immediately after Skatetown, Wilder placed Dorothy in a Canadian picture, Autumnborn. It was to be a low-budget drive-in feature, but it would be Dorothy's first lead. Wilder set the deal to give her a learning experience, actual acting this time in front of a camera. Learning what Dorothy was proposed to do, because she had settled by now on an ambitious goal, she wanted to become a serious actress. Her beauty opened doors. She meant for her acting to carry her through. She made the round of casting calls. She read scripts and plays on her own, outside class, and acted out parts with friends. When she got a part, she arrived at the set on time and was always prepared. An episode of Fantasy Island turned up next. Money was starting to come in. Wilder noticed that it was Spider who cashed the checks. Dorothy's husband may have been helping her manage her money, but Wilder also noticed that he was spending more on himself than he did on her. The couple bought a 1974 Mercedes from Spider's pal for $13,000, but Dorothy complained to Casilli that she never got to use the car because Spider had it all the time. She made do with the beat-up 1967 Mercury Cougar. Marilyn Grabowski had dinner with Dorothy and Spider one cold, wet evening. Spider carried a mink coat over an arm when they arrived, and Marilyn thought, well, occasionally he can be considerate. He's carrying her coat. When they left the restaurant, there was a light rain. Spider put the mink on himself. In October, executives from ABC TV went to Hefner with a problem. The Nielsen ratings for the new season showed the network losing its lead in the primetime programming to CBS. Playboy Productions had given ABC a 25th anniversary show that had done well in the ratings the previous spring. They needed a similar special, something with Playboy parties, something for November. Hefner put together the Playboy roller disco and pajama party in record time, which is one of my favorite features ever. It is the happiest, most joyful, most fun little feature you can ever see. You should definitely watch it. The Playboy roller disco and pajama party. Richard Dawson was the host. Chuck Mangione played by the pool in the afternoon, and the village people held forth in the great hall at night. Playmates were on camera throughout. A special film segment featured the Playmates of the 80s. Dorothy did a brief comedy bit with actor James Caan, a pet squirrel, and Caan's dog, Rooter. When Hefner looked at the tape, he was so taken with the way that Dorothy came across on camera that he gave her a running part with Dawson throughout the show. Someone else was impressed with Dorothy Stratten that day, film producer Peter Bogdanovich. Okay, Peter Bogdanovich, I hate less than I hate Spider, obviously. So, because I just can't be blacking everybody's name out of this story, we'll keep him in there. But I would just like to state for the record that in my humble opinion, Peter Bogdanovich, he may have gone a little crazy when Dorothy died, but he also groomed and sexually assaulted her little sister, and it was disgusting, and it was obvious, and it was very Woody Allen, and ew. So when we talk about Peter Bogdanovich, just think about Roman Polanski and other perverted assholes. But to Dorothy, he never actually got the opportunity to screw her over. He was a very positive influence in Dorothy's life, even though he started doing all of the manipulative, controlling bullshit things that Spider liked doing to Dorothy. PDB, he definitely started doing that, but he only had Dorothy in his life for a matter of months before her tragic demise. So there's that. Hefner had become an executive producer on PDB's latest film, St. Jack, which had been adapted from a Playboy story. Petey was casting a new comedy titled They All Laughed. He was looking for a beautiful ingenue to play a featured part in the film. Dorothy might be a possibility if she could act. He told her he was interested in hearing her read. Dorothy called her agent. She heard so much gossip about Petey and his previous romance with Sybil Shepherd. She wondered, was he serious about having her read for the part? David Wilder checked. Petey was serious. Dave drove Dorothy to the director's house in Bel Air. She read for him. He asked her back for a second reading. This time, Spider drove her to Bogdanovich's in the Mercedes. He sat outside the director's gate the entire evening. In late November, Dorothy learned that she would be the 1980 Playmate of the Year. Official notice would come out later, but she and Mario Caselli needed to begin work immediately on the photography. Mario hadn't seen Dorothy for a while. He was struck by how much she'd matured from the shy, insecure kid who first stepped off the plane in Vancouver 15 months before. He was fascinated by the way people responded to her. When they walked through the airport together, people would turn and stare. She had the stately blonde thing, he thought, even in baggy corduroy slacks and a shirt. Part of it was the way she walked. She was nearsighted and, like a lot of nearsighted people, she carried her nose a little higher in the air. But she wasn't standoffish or a snob. In all the years he'd been photographing Playmates, he'd never met anyone quite like her. Spider's plans were expanding with Dorothy's career. He'd made a deal with photographers Bill and Susan LaChasse to photograph Dorothy on roller skates wearing a sexy skating outfit. From this, Spider hoped to market a poster that he figured would sell 1 million copies and earn, by his calculation, $300,000. He wanted John Derek to do a book on Dorothy similar to the one he was doing on his actress wife, Beau. He had plans for a book about himself as well, and he paid a writer $1,000 to write the first draft of a biography. Oh my god. But I love writing, and I have had a fairly interesting life, and some people have said, oh, you should write a book about that. And part of me is like, yeah, I should write a book about that. But the other part of me feels like every arrogant a-hole in the universe feels like their life is so interesting that someone should write a book about them. And I would truly hate to be one of, those people. So I am somewhat put off by the idea. But I'm also enthused. I don't know what we'll do. Okay. One of Spider's few friends in LA was a former Floridian named Chip Clark, a health spa manager and the boyfriend of June 1979 Playmate Luann Fernald. They'd met earlier that year Chip and Luann's first weekend in town when Dorothy and Luann worked a Playmate promotion together. Since Spider had so much free time, he spent lots of it with Chip. Chip was a laid-back guy who could get along with almost anyone, but he couldn't believe Spider. He never met a more impulsive, hostile individual in his life, with a real propensity for violence. In the short time they'd known each other, he'd seen Spider fly off the handle and swing at strangers, chase cars, kick doors, push people down who provoked him, and throw food on the floor in restaurants if the service didn't suit him. He embarrassed Chip a lot of times in public, but when it was just the two of them together, Chip found him good company. Chip talked Spider into working out at the health spa, and they hung out there that winter while the two women were away on promotions. Chip and Luann were among the first to sense the trouble building in Spider and Dorothy's relationship. Dorothy took her sister Louise, who was now almost 13, to Los Angeles for Christmas. She'd started sending money home to Nellie to pay for Louise's braces and other things the family needed. She gave Louise a tour of the mansion and introduced her to Hefner. 2 days after Christmas, Dorothy shot an episode of Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, which she played Miss Cosmos, the most perfect woman in the universe. When she found her name listed in TV Guide, she rolled on the floor in excitement. Then she called her mother to share the thrill of the discovery. Bogdanovich invited Dorothy back for a third reading. Her agent sent her on a casting call to Crown International Pictures. Producer Marilyn Tenser, a tough-minded woman, not easily impressed, was looking for a beautiful young actress to play the title role of Galaxina. Crown's first big budget film, Galaxina, was a science fiction satire about a stunning female robot. Avery Schreiber and James David Hinton were to be the male co-stars. Director William Sachs and I had interviewed more than 300 girls for the part, Tenser remembers. The girl we wanted had to be not only an actress, she had to be a knockout. Unfortunately, most of the girls who could act weren't pretty enough. When Dorothy came in, she was absolutely exquisite. She read very well. You wouldn't expect a girl who looked like that to be able to act, but she could. She was convinced that she was going to be a major star, and I think she would have been. Dorothy got the part. Spider ordered new license plates for their car, Galaxina for the Mercury and Star 80 for the Mercedes. Mario, which essentially means Star 80, is Spider's name. So I love that they made a movie about Dorothy essentially with Spider's name right across for the title. That was so classy, you guys. You guys are just class. Ugh. I am in a bad mood today. Oh, I still am. I feel it. I feel it in me. I'm still a little bit bitey. I apologize, everyone, for my bitiness today. Mario and Marilyn Grabowski both noticed a change in Dorothy near the end of the Playmate of the Year photography in January. She would arrive at the studio, tired and puffy-eyed. She seemed moody and distant, a new experience. Spider would interrupt the photo session with a phone call, and an argument would ensue, and Dorothy would go to her dressing room and cry. Marilyn surprised Dorothy one afternoon with a gift, a purebred Tibetan Shih Tzu puppy. She thought it might cheer her up. Mario photographed Dorothy playing with her new pet for the Playmate of the Year pictorial scheduled for the June issue. Dorothy named the dog Marston, Hefner's middle name, and that evening she took it to the mansion to show him. Later that week, Mario asked Dorothy about the puppy. She said Spider kept it with him all the time and she couldn't even play with it. 3 days later, the dog died. Marilyn saw that Dorothy needed to get away for a few days and suggested that the two of them spend a week at La Costa, a health resort near San Diego. The two women worked out, played tennis, swam, took massage and whirlpool treatments, ate lightly, and slept well. Dorothy was good company, but she didn't reveal what was troubling her. Dorothy returned to LA 5 pounds lighter. She looked sensational. Her agent called with good news. Bogdanovich wanted her for a part in They All Laughed, which would star Ben Gazzara, John Ritter, and Audrey Hepburn. The film was to be shot on location in New York, and Dorothy would have to leave at the end of March as soon as she finished Galaxina. She was days away from her 20th birthday as well, and on the way to her dream of stardom. It was a process Hefner had seen repeated in many different ways many times over the years. When a young woman was chosen Playmate of the Month, it was more than simply a modeling assignment. It was an opportunity that could lead to a dramatic change with her personal and professional life. What each Playmate did with that opportunity depended a great deal on her own individual motivations and talent, and of course, no one had come so far in such a short a time as had Dorothy Stratten. Equally remarkable to Hefner was how much she had grown as a person in self-awareness and assurance, without losing her unspoiled sensitivity. For Dorothy, growing up also meant struggling towards independence from Spider's domination. Somewhere along the way, she had realized that although she still cared for Spider, still felt obligated to him, and still concerned about his welfare, she no longer wanted to live with him. She talked about this change in her feelings with her friend Luann and other close friends. Luann remembered Christmas as the time when Dorothy started thinking seriously about leaving Spider. Luann understood that she meant to move slowly because she was afraid of hurting him and possibly afraid of what he might do. One of Dorothy's first assertions of independence was her decision to hire a business manager. With an accelerating career, she needed one. Actor Vince Edwards, television's Ben Casey of the 60s, and a friend who she'd met at the mansion, suggested Robert Houston. Houston's firm handled such clients as Warren Beatty, Farrah Fawcett, Paul Newman, and Goldie Hawn. Dorothy made an appointment to meet with Houston, and Spider went along. These spiders keep sneaking in here. Spider. Spider. To Bob Houston, Dorothy seemed like a young woman starting out on a promising career who sincerely wanted to establish responsible control over her financial life. Spider preferred pontificating, theoretical discussions of how their affairs ought to be arranged. Partners was the key word. Spider wanted equal authority over her finances and half of her income. Dorothy didn't openly disagree, but from her expressions, Houston read a message to appease Spider now and to talk to her later. At some point, Houston would mumble something about legal difficulties or the problems of Canadian citizenship. Houston discovered that Spider had no real income of his own. He wasn't Dorothy's agent, and he wasn't her manager, though he imagined he was and liked telling strangers about their career. Houston understood what Spider was, and he did his best to help Dorothy deal with him. For tax purposes, Houston set up a corporation called Dorothy Stratten Enterprises to receive whatever money she earned. She was its president, Houston's partner its treasurer, and Houston himself its secretary. She owned 100% of its stock. The corporation's income went into a separate account which Dorothy, but not Spider, could draw funds. The corporation paid Dorothy a salary that was deposited into a joint checking account on which she and Spider could sign. Spider chafed at this unexpected curtailment of his easy access to Dorothy's earnings. What upset him even more was Dorothy's heating counsel better than his own. Before beginning Galaxina, Dorothy started shooting another pictorial for Playboy with Mario Caselli. It was an unusual feature, an idea Hefner suggested to her, a tribute to the famous blondes of Hollywood, in which she would portray such classic sex stars as Jean Harlow, Betty Grable, and Marilyn Monroe. The theme intrigued Dorothy, and she read biographies of each of the stars to be depicted. Galaxina was shot at a ranch in the mountains above Malibu, a long drive from their house. Spider drove Dorothy to work in the morning and back to keep an eye on her at lunchtime, and sometimes back again in the evenings to pick her up. He'd burn a full tank of gas a day. Between visits, he called to Galaxina as he'd called to Mario's studio, the calls reducing Dorothy to tears. He badgered her and brutalized her. Dorothy found a friend and co-star James David Hinton, an easygoing Texan and a Baylor graduate. They worked together in the evening. In the camaraderie of filming, they spent time together, and Hinton fell in love. but he discovered to his surprise that Dorothy was straighter than the girls at Baylor. She always called Spider to let him know where she was. He rewarded her with angry demands that she come home. I don't know why he wants me to come home, Dorothy said to Hinton after one called to Spider. When I get there, he'll be out at a nightclub somewhere. Spider wanted to go with Dorothy to New York for the filming of They All Laughed. She would be gone for 3 weeks. She wanted the time to sort out her feelings away from Spider's pressure. Boldly, she told him no, and she made the decision stick. In New York, she showed up on time, as always, and quietly watched the production taking shape. She was especially fascinated with Audrey Hepburn and studied her as she worked. Sometimes Dorothy read A Farewell to Arms or a diet book. Probably recommended by Petey. Bogdanovich treated her gently. She was such a darling little girl, the makeup specialist Fern Buckner later told a reporter. Very beautiful, of course. Whatever you did to her was all right. Okay, my mouth is also again getting tired from reading so much, and I think that's about 2/3 of the way through. So we're gonna post these 2 videos for tonight, and then I'll film the final for this article like tomorrow or sometime really soon. Okay? Thanks so much for stopping by, friends and neighbors. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. I'll get back to you with part 3 really, really quick.